I was about 12 years old in the early 2000s. My family were going on a trip overnight with my dad for work, and they were letting me stay home alone. My grandparents lived in an attached apartment, so I wasn't truly alone. Nonetheless, I was quite excited to stay up all night, eat pizza and candy, and play video games till the morning. That night, before my parents were scheduled to leave, I'd woke up at 3 a.m. This wasn't unusual, as I would have trouble sleeping. Half asleep, I stumbled down the stairs to the living room on my way to the kitchen for a little midnight snack. I wasn't prepared for what would happen next. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, the moonlight spilled in through the window, lighting up the room enough to see my steps, but not enough to see clearly. I looked up from my feet to see ahead of me, and on the couch was something that left me terrified. A man dressed in all black suit with a hat similar to a cowboy hat was sitting straight up on the couch, legs crossed and hands together as if he was waiting for someone. As I stated, he raised his head up to look at me. A pair of red eyes pierced my soul and an evil grin flicked across his face. I immediately felt an ice-cold chill as my hairs stood on end. I turned around and bolted back upstairs and straight to my room. After a minute, I tried to be brave and come back down, this time turning the light on from the top of the stairs. The man was nowhere to be seen, and nothing was out of place. I had seen the red eyes in the house before, peering at me from the closet of my sick mother's room. I think it was a demon who preyed on her, which is a story for another time. But this encounter was the first time I ever saw them attached to a body. And even now, 20 years later, it still puts me on edge as I can remember the experience in great detail. When I was a child, I lived in a haunted house with my mother and 3 sisters. So many things happened in that house, but I will share this one story for now. At this point in time, my 2 younger sisters and I shared a bedroom, even though the house was massive and we easily could have had our own rooms, but that's beside the point. One of my sisters is autistic and was obsessed with playing with water, among other things. One night I woke up to the sound of the bathroom sink running. I looked out towards the hallway and saw the light was on, but that was normal. We were all afraid of the dark. Assuming it was my sister, I ignored it, but didn't fall back asleep. My bed was closest to the door, and a minute or 2 later I heard her coming down the hallway, back into the room. Only she didn't climb in a bed. Instead, she decided to pull my covers off me, lift my shirt and place her freezing cold wet hands on my back. Annoyed, I turned around to yell at her, but she wasn't there. I was stunned, but not terrified, and when I looked over, she was in her bed. I remember pulling the covers up over my head and sleeping with them tucked around me like that for years. I asked her about it the next morning, but she swears she wasn't playing in the water, and then got mad at me for scaring her. I believe I was 8 at the time. This story takes place around 2010 when I was 12 years old. My 2 best friends, Gina, Sabrina, and myself, along with a few other kids in the neighborhood that were also our age, often rode bikes exploring around the neighborhood. Whenever we rode bikes, we started to notice this older white sedan, around a late 90s model, that would follow us around the neighborhood. No matter what street we turned on, they would always go very, very slow and never stop following us. They wouldn't turn in at a house or anything. This went on for several months, and one day, one of my friends was able to get the license plate, and that friend's parents contacted the police. The police came out and got information from us, and when they looked up the plate, it did not match the car. So, with the behavior of the person in the car and the fact that the license plate didn't match the car, it was possible that the person driving the car was trying to kidnap one of us and had stolen the plate. We never were able to figure out who the person was, and to this day, 13 years later, I still think about the situation and wonder what their intentions were, especially when I'm alone, walking around the neighborhood. I wonder if they're still out there somewhere, and I hope they're not stalking anyone else. Last night, I was walking home from my girlfriend's house. I passed some traffic lights, and to the right on the pavement I was walking on, I saw a woman just completely stopped. I assumed she was someone who wasn't local, about to ask for directions, so I took my headphones out, slowed down a bit, and smiled. It was dim, so I don't attribute this to anything weird, but it's what made me not stop. I couldn't make out any features at first. I was maybe 2 or 3 meters away from her. Bear in mind she'd been in my view for about 20 seconds and hadn't moved at all, so I was a bit freaked out. I'm naturally a cautious person, so I was getting ready to go through some harrowing experience. I got a bit closer and still couldn't make out any facial features. It seemed like her face was distorted. When I got closer, I could see that her face was perfectly normal. This is where I assumed she wasn't local and about to ask for directions, but her face was emotionless. It had been over a minute of me being aware of her where she still hadn't moved. I didn't stop because I felt creeped out. I just brushed it all off, but I did do a check about a minute later, and she still hadn't moved. I kept looking, and eventually she turned to her right. It ran through my mind for the next few minutes, so I called my girlfriend because I'd be more comfortable that way. I got home fine, and I just assumed it might have been the illness, where some parts of your body freeze. Last night, I slept fine and didn't think much of it, but I did think about it for a while. I just got back from a driving lesson as I'm writing this, and on that lesson I heard what made me think this was worth writing. I told my instructor of the eerie experience I had the night before, and he lives in the area where I saw it, but early in the morning today, he saw a woman. Blonde hair, expressionless, as he said. She was hunched down, sat against the wall, around a 1 to 2 minute walk from where I saw her. He said she was breathing very heavily, and it creeped him out. A massive coincidence that we both saw it, but creepy either way. I'm not sure if I'm glad I didn't say something, because something could have been going on. Either way, I'll never figure it out, and that could be a good thing. Needless to say, I now take the train home. Hey guys, thanks for listening. If you want to hear more scary stories, please subscribe and I'll keep them coming. Until next time.